Do North Koreans get a happy ending when they've moved to South Korea? Tough answer, more than 0%, but far less than 100. South Korea is a hard place for everyone. It's hard for South Koreans too. A lot of North Koreans have a rough time because South Koreans don't especially like them. They act different, they sound different, and this is a country with a big conformity culture, you know. People are supposed to act alike, they're supposed to act similar. North Koreans have a different sense of time, different sense of duty. They don't do all the same politeness rituals and things. There are a lot of cultural divides, and that makes South Koreans kind of uncomfortable. Xenophobia is everywhere, and that is within Korea too. Hi, and welcome back to Teo the Peopleist, and welcome back to MTGs and Refugees. Today is not quite about one topic, but just a mix of questions with short format answers. Each of these will let you find out a little bit more about North Koreans, what they experience outside of North Korea. So I'll just go through them one by one. And before that, today I'll be playing MTG and testing out a little bit of a get big, get bigger deck. It is mostly green with a little blue and red sprinkled in. Of course, you have the basic combo of, green mana dorks with Badger Mole, Leyline Weaver to ramp up your mana. Then we have Ouroboros to generate counters fast. And on top of that, we have the addition of the partner ladies who give even more counters. So that stacks together pretty nicely with Ouroboros. They're very good friends, these two ladies, maybe even roommates. This deck gets even more fun with the Oko the Ringleader and Doubling Season combo over here. So if you haven't seen this before, it goes exponential. The Doubling Season, it doubles all counters and tokens, so it makes Oko come in with 6 instead of 3 loyalty counters. So it can immediately pop off. It is 5 counter ultimate, which doubles everything, including the Doubling Season, and the Doubling Season also makes more things double. So the doubling makes tokens, Doubling Season makes tokens double. So yeah, basically all the counters and tokens, they exponentially grow. So Ouroboros and partners, they basically just go wild with the doubling season. So this deck can easily produce a crash, which is one of my favorite outcomes. So let's go ahead and check it out while I answer some questions. All right, so let's get started with the first question. Where do North Koreans live after leaving North Korea? And the number one place, no question, is China. That's partly because China is the first place they have to go. Very few people have escaped across the DMZ because it's hard and it's dangerous. If you don't hit a mine, you might get shot by soldiers on either side if you try to run across. So most people leave by escaping across the 2 rivers on the Chinese border, which also means most escapees are from that border region. It's also pretty hard to leave China once they get in. I described that a bit in my previous videos. The security is hard. They're considered illegal residents. So yeah, China has agreements with North Korea, so basically they just have to hide. If they want to get out of China, they can't just walk out. They need to find a way to get to another country. Buying train and bus tickets requires ID, so that's not easy. Taking a taxi is expensive, so they can't do that really quickly. They can do that if they amass enough money, but if they don't have enough money, which is pretty unlikely that they have enough money, it'll take some time. So most North Koreans who get to China just stay there, basically. Only a lucky few get out. Only some amount of them will get out, basically. After leaving China, if they leave successfully, they usually just live in South Korea. They can get South Korean citizenship, pretty easily, since the policy is that all Koreans are Koreans. That's the South Korean government's policy. And there's a whole bureau of the government that's dedicated to bringing Korea back together, bringing North and South Korea back into one country. That's called the Ministry of Unification. But not everyone wants to stay in South Korea forever. Some people do actually end up moving to other countries. I've heard of a lot who move to the US, and some move to the UK. There are probably a few in some other developed countries, places that have refugee policies, but I haven't heard too much about them myself, and I think some of them are in Canada. Japan is also another place that some move to for some kind of specific reasons. There was a movement a few decades ago called the Return to Paradise movement, basically. Before people knew what North Korea looked like inside, the North Korean government was advertising to Korean descendants who lived in Japan. And basically they moved there during World War II or during the colonization of Korea, and they stayed there after the war ended. And North Korea said, hey, come back home. It's great. You'll love it. and some people did, some of these Japanese Korean people. And after that, some of these people tried to escape out of North Korea. A lot of them failed. So some people have gone from Japan to North Korea and back to Japan. It's a long way, right? And some were born in North Korea but later escaped to Japan. It can be a little bit easier for some of these people to live or to escape because the Japanese Korean families can receive money from outside. So they have more mobility. It's easier to escape, such as by paying a broker. So there are some very active North Korean advocates living in Japan today. Okay, next, how many North Koreans escaped from North Korea? South Korea's Ministry of Unification says 30,000 or so North Koreans have landed in South Korea at some point. Getting to South Korea is not necessarily easier than getting out of North Korea. What I mean is, it's hard enough to get out of North Korea, but it could still be very difficult to keep going and getting into South Korea. So most would probably stick around in China for longer, and some go to China, but basically just get turned back around before they can even leave. That's that forced repatriation, deportation thing that I believe I've mentioned before. So it could be like, I don't know, 3 times as many, 4 times as many, maybe more than that. I'm guessing at least 100,000 escaped people in China over the years would be fair, but it could be a lot more if you add in the attempted escapes as well. Next question, why don't more people escape? So there's 2 questions here. First of all, why don't people want to escape, and why can't people escape? At first, there are all kinds of reasons why people want to escape and why they don't want to escape. People who are more hungry or are afraid of the state, they want to escape. People who have bad songbun, that means their family's reputation is bad, they want to get out. Those people, they can't get good jobs. They can't go to good schools. It's just a life of hell for them, working in the mines or other suboptimal jobs. They would definitely want to leave more. But people with an office job in Pyongyang or something, successful donju, those people have an okay life and they don't really have a big reason to leave. Smaller reasons maybe, yeah, but just they don't have a big one. And you need a big one because a lot of people just don't want to leave home. Once you leave, you're probably not coming back. You'll never see your friends or family again. It's a huge decision. The government is also very clear that you're not supposed to leave. The North Korean government calls it treason, basically. Who wants to be a traitor? Even if you're successful and you get out, what could happen to your friends and family? And if you screw up, if you fail, it's going to be bad. You can expect to go to prison and never have a good life again. You know, the low songbun and all, like I said. So, maybe you'll get executed. There's lots of reasons not to want to try, so you have to really want to escape to even try to escape. And finally, some people actually do like being in North Korea. I mean, it is their home, it is where they're from. If you talk to people who escaped, they say they hate it. Of course, there are people who escaped. There are people who love the US a lot more than I do. I left the US. So different human experiences will give you different biases. Now, why can't people leave even if they want to? So first, like I said, the DMZ is out. It's not impossible, but it's really hard and dangerous, so barely anyone even tries. The security is bad on both ends of the country. Guards will shoot you if you try to leave through the DMZ. Guards will try to shoot you if you try to leave through the Chinese border. It didn't used to be so bad. You could pay off the guards and walk across the 2 rivers to get to China in winter. That's like 500 meters across. I think I said this before. It's just a little bit of a walk, basically. But after COVID, they put up barbed wire fences, more cameras. Probably they disciplined the guards and changed some policies. People just don't go that way so much now. It's just not that easy. And I mean, that's even if you make up your mind to go. The government really doesn't want people getting out. You also have to be near a border too. North Koreans can't just say something like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go take a vacation, Hae-san. It doesn't work like that. People only move around sometimes. You usually stay where you were born unless you move up or you move down in your social position. If you move up, you'll go to Pyongyang or another major city. If you move down, you could be sent to any part of the countryside, so it might not be a border town for you. So no one is just hopping in a car or on a bus and heading out to the border towns. There's too many checkpoints, there's too many forms to sign, and there's too many cameras and things like that. Most people are not getting there, and that means they don't have an easy route to get out of the country. Next question. Why do people not just run off when they're working in other countries? So maybe you heard, I mentioned it before, that people get sent to China, Russia, or some other place for work or study sometimes. If you're a factory or farm worker, there's 2 good reasons. If you're wealthy, if you're a student or something like that, there's also 2 good reasons. Let me explain what those reasons are. For the laborers, the first reason is that they don't have easy access to knowledge and connections. They're monitored a lot. They have to live in dorms with other North Koreans under the watch of some North Korean guard. They can't just sneak out. And if they wanted to sneak out, they need to know how. Some of them have phones, but not all of them. And the ones who have phones, they don't really know what to do with them. I mean, imagine you're in their shoes. Imagine you're in, I don't know, Russia. Are you going to type, "How do I escape Russia?" into Google? I mean, they're paranoid. They're North Koreans. They just came from a high surveillance country. Think about what that means for their mentality. The second thing is the same with rich people. Common reason. And that's that the government knows who they are. Before they even get to leave, they have to go through all these steps. Lots of paperwork, lots of clearances. They've been vetted. They had to prove their loyalty before. The government knows who they are and where they're going. The government knows where their family lives. If these people run off, the government will punish their families, economically and maybe even with prison. It's a hostage situation, more or less. So yeah, that's the same for rich people who are studying abroad or who are on diplomat duty. They've been vetted. But also as, rich people or high songbun, whatever, high title people, they have a lot to lose. If they try to run off, they're going to lose everything. They're going to lose all their positions and assets in North Korea. They have to be successful if they want to escape, because they'll have nothing if they fail. And they probably don't want to leave anyway, because their lives in North Korea are okay. Next question. What do North Koreans do after they have resettled? Everything. Most North Koreans kind of live quiet lives after escaping, just doing things like factory labor or working at coffee shops, stuff like that. Nothing too special. Occasionally they start businesses, they become advocates, or they become lawyers, doctors, stuff like that. Most don't become public figures. Very few become public figures. Some become public figures. You can find them on YouTube. Of course, a lot of people want to share their stories and advocate for North Koreans. So they go into advocacy or politics. There's one member of the National Assembly. That's Mr. Tae Yong-oh. He's very well known for his North Korean background. North Koreans are allowed and encouraged to go to university in South Korea, trade schools, things like that. So a lot of them take up professional positions. There isn't like a North Korean field, like some job that every North Korean is gonna get. Nothing like that. But they just kind of figure out that they have a choice and they go with their gut, do what they want to do. Not all of them want to be like North Koreans, right? So they just do stuff that South Koreans do. They try to fit in as much as possible. Some are, I don't know what you'd say, part-time North Koreans, where they might share their stories or get into politics, but mostly just do boring stuff day to day. Next question. Do North Koreans get a happy ending when they've moved to South Korea? Tough answer, more than 0%, but far less than 100%. South Korea is a hard place for everyone. It's hard for South Koreans too. A lot of North Koreans have a rough time because South Koreans don't especially like them. They act different, they sound different, and this is a country with a big conformity culture, People are supposed to act alike, they're supposed to act similar. North Koreans have a different sense of time, different sense of duty. They don't do all the same politeness rituals and things. There are a lot of cultural divides, and that makes South Koreans kind of uncomfortable. Xenophobia is everywhere, and that is within Korea too. And some South Koreans are just straight up bigots, right? Anyone who's not 100% like them, they hate them. I don't mean all, I don't mean the majority. I just mean some South Koreans are bigots. there's also just some regular socioeconomic struggles that are putting pressure on everyone in South Korea. South Koreans are afraid of the country getting too dense, or of the economy collapsing, of the system getting overloaded, of the country getting overfilled. So they sometimes just hate the idea of North Koreans or North Korean support. They hate North Koreans as people who get welfare support or cost tax dollars. They don't feel like Koreans have to help Koreans. That is an old-fashioned view for many people in South Korea. Young people hate paying for other people. Women especially, it turns out, like North Koreans a lot less than men do. Women are not necessarily fond of North Koreans. We're not totally certain why that is, although there was some research study on that. And on top of that, South Korea is a connections culture. The people you grew up with, they help you to go to a nice school, to find a good company to work for, and so on. That's coming down a bit over the years. There's less nepotism than there was before, but you still have an advantage over other people, like when you're getting jobs or getting a promotion. You have an advantage if you know people. So North Koreans who show up with zero connections in South Korea, they have trouble getting introduced. And then if they apply to a company, they can't talk about where they come from, That can be kind of a common point for South Koreans. Oh, you're from Gyeongsangnam-do, I'm from Gyeongsangnam-do too. Oh, great, great, great. They can't really talk about that. And then at the interviews, they're next to other Koreans, but there's clearly a difference in their cultural values. And the North Koreans, they miss a lot of social cues because there's subtext, right? There's like a social air in the room and they don't know how to breathe it. So they have a tough time building lives here in South Korea. Economic performance is pretty bad. I did a report on it a few years ago. NKDB has a file, I think. They're like 30% or so below their South Korean peers on income at every economic tier. They're an economically disadvantaged minority. No other way to put it. They also have a lot of psychological baggage. No one wants to talk about that because South Koreans don't like to talk about South Koreans' mental health, and North Koreans, they don't have the language to discuss the idea of mental health. There aren't a lot of psych clinics in North Korea, So the resettlement centers, the HANA centers, they offer counseling and they try to get things out of people and help them survive, help them cope. The North Koreans, they've been through a lot. They don't get it easy on this side either. Next question. Do North Koreans have NGOs? There are quite a few North Korean activist groups, some led by North Koreans, and others just have a lot of North Korean staff. Daily NK, the news organization, they have a number of North Korean journalists. The Citizens Alliance for North Korean Human Rights, that is another group of both South and North Koreans. Korea Internet Studio, that's a newer media access group. That's led by a North Korean lawyer. You can also look into the Association of North Korean Defector Organizations. So just to be clear, the majority of North Koreans outside of North Korea are not politically active. Some of them in South Korea want to campaign for the rights of North Korean people. There are also some pro-North Korea groups, such as the Jongnyeon, based in Japan. I'm tempted to call these groups astroturfed, as they're organized by the government of North Korea. But that really wouldn't be fair, I guess. I don't have that much knowledge. Anti-Pyongyang groups often receive government support, but they're usually self-organized. So I have to be reasonable and assume that at least some pro-Pyongyang groups are also independently organized, and then they receive support from Korea's government. I don't know, I can't say for sure. I don't know everything about the whole mechanisms of North Korea's organizing system. But I also have to say that getting government funding for a human rights advocacy group requires filling out forms and making applications. I'm not certain if the North Korean government has an application process for overseas organizations. If they do, I would like to see it and analyze it, because I'm very curious to see the parallels and differences compared to South Korea's MOU and the US's NED. Next question. What are escapees' political beliefs like? So to be very, very clear, every escapee is different. And there are reasons why North Korean would want to pick one or another party to support in South Korean politics. There are two leading parties in South Korea, which I may get into another time, but in short, the People's Power Party, PPP, is more conservative, and the Democratic Party, DP, is more progressive. When it comes to North Korean issues, the DP is more about peace and cooperation. Their aim is for reunification, bringing Korea back together. While the PPP is the opposite, they view North Korea as a hostile enemy and a military threat. But this doesn't neatly result in policies as you might expect. You can't necessarily follow the lines here, although there is some logic. What I mean is the Democratic Party usually gives more support for North Koreans in South Korea, financially and in social welfare. The PPP gives less, but they're also more aggressive against Pyongyang in the human rights sector. What that means is they criticize North Korea more for having bad human rights, basically. So it sounds like the PPP likes to have people defect, to escape from North Korea and become an enemy of North Korea. Whereas the DP likes to help those people who have already escaped, the people who have come from North Korea, because they want to remind all of Korea that all Koreans are Koreans, or something like that. That's their basic logic. Informal reunification, I think, is the phrase that they used to use. And these two parties, they have way too few common points on North Korea. There's a lot of polarization on the issue. Advocates for human rights reform and reunification are usually opposed to the government in North Korea. The North Korean advocates, I mean. So North Koreans who are against North Korea, they usually align with the PPP. The PPP gives more support for anti-Pyongyang groups. The DP wants to handle North Korean policy entirely at the government level, so they don't really work together with the civil groups at all. So if you are a very vocal critic of the North Korean government, which a lot of escaped North Koreans are, then the PPP is probably your ally in that fight. I've also talked to some North Koreans who think that the South Korean government doesn't need to provide welfare support to North Koreans, or at least not to the majority of North Koreans in South Korea. So their views can be kind of surprising as to who they align with, but they all have a logic. Next question. Who and what countries are fighting for North Koreans? Sometimes it can feel like North Koreans' rights advocacy groups are fighting alone. It can feel like they're fighting alone or that they're in a small insulated network. Sometimes it feels like it's some kind of project of conservatives, which is weird because human rights is something we think of as a liberal thing, as a progressive thing. But there are definitely progressives and principled human rights defenders across the world who still care. I've seen and met human rights defenders from all across Europe, especially associated with embassies, or some of them are interns for international organizations, especially human rights research organizations. But the largest number of advocates include conservative and religious groups in the US and South Korea, human rights researchers based in South Korea, refuge advocates based in the UK and Canada, also a coalition of ethnic Koreans and pro-minority progressives in Japan. So it's quite a diverse group of people that are fighting this fight. If anyone tells you that North Korean human rights advocates just have one ethnic, national, or political characteristic, that they belong to some single monolithic and ideologically unified bloc, no, sorry, that's wrong. It's a diverse group of different people, many of who actually hate each other's guts. Next question, do North Koreans ever go back to North Korea after they leave? Yeah. Many go back by force, not because they want to. I think I talked a little bit about that before, about deportation, forced repatriation from China. The Chinese government deports North Koreans often, but not always, not in every case. Some people choose to go back as well. They choose to go back from China or from South Korea. Those in China may leave by their own choice because they find it difficult to live in China, or because they're scared, or they miss their families. In fact, for all escaped North Koreans, I think the number one reason for wanting to return to North Korea is just homesickness. A lot of them have left friends, family, and hometown culture behind. And it's a lot to give up. Not a lot have successfully returned to North Korea unless they were forced back. It's hard to get out, it's hard to get in. One or two have just snuck back in through the river, through the DMZ, something like that. The South Korean government also does not let people go back to North Korea or to leave from South Korea into North Korea if they want to try to do that. There was a high-profile case of a man who was basically held in South Korea as a prisoner of war, starting from the time of the Civil War. And decades later, he still could not go back home, even though he tried to leave again and again. And they keep arresting him and jailing him for treason or whatever, because he obviously had no allegiance to the South government. That's obviously a human rights issue, how this guy just wants to get out, but they're not letting him. But that's a security issue, so we can't just say that the government is being mean or something like that, right? Anyway, he tried to drive to the border, and the DMZ guards were like, no. Next question. Do North Koreans ever go back to China after leaving China? Because of course, many North Koreans spend a lot of time in China after they escape from North Korea, either on their way to South Korea, or maybe it's their last place to go. This is an interesting one that I found out about more recently. A lot of North Koreans actually do want to go back to China. Many of the North Korean women have children there. Many have husbands that they formed families with. For them, their former towns in China are kind of like second homes, so they want to go back. But basically they can't. Here's the thing. China has a lot of video surveillance technology everywhere. Here's what we heard. People will get pulled out of line on the way in. Korean Chinese agents will bring them to back rooms and say things like, "We know you're from North Korea. Get out right now. Go back to South Korea. If you stay here, you're going to get arrested and they're going to force you back to North Korea." And these are people who have South Korean passports. I mean, it doesn't matter because the Chinese government has IDs on them attached to Chinese registration IDs or sometimes North Korean IDs, and they can get all that information with video systems that take around 30 seconds to register a person. So remember that immigration lines in airports are high security zones. So it's really hard for them to re-enter. I think it's only possible if they lived in rural areas with no registration whatsoever before they escaped, if they never used a fake ID or anything like that, which is a very unlikely situation when you think about how they have to live and escape from China. The ones who spent months or years there, they probably had to use IDs to get cell phones, to get on trains, taxis, things like that. I don't know, maybe those who just pass right through China, the minority of them, they can visit as tourists like normal South Koreans because they're in a very different situation, but I'll have to ask around for that because that's not what I personally heard about. There's plenty more to say. There's many more questions to answer, but I'm running out of time for this talk, so I'll just kind of slow it down here. Hopefully by now you have a bigger image of North Koreans in refuge. They really are a diverse group, but they still have one thing in common among almost all of them, which is that they've escaped from something. They wanted to escape from something, and the way they see the world is based on that escape experience. It's important to remember this because many of them will tell you what an awful place North Korea is. But there are still many more North Koreans with different experiences who have not and will not escape from North Korea. So try to keep an open mind. Learn as much as you can. Listen to as many different voices as you can find, and let us all hope that in the future maybe North Korea will open up more and let us see more inside. Until then, keep on peopling.